Hi, it's Steve from PartSelect. Today we're going to show you how to change the water actuator on your refrigerator, and it's a really easy job. All you're going to need is a Phillips screwdriver, a pair of needle nose pliers, and a small number 1 Phillips screwdriver. Let me show you how we do it. Now before we begin the repair, we're going to need to disconnect the power supply to the refrigerator, so simply pull the plug or pull the refrigerator far enough forward to disconnect the plug. Then we're going to pull the drip tray out next. Just grasp it with your fingers, slide it out, and set that aside. Then next we're going to take those 3 Phillips screws off of the dispenser escutcheon. And we're going to lift up on that cover, disengage it from the top, and then we'll rotate it around so that we can locate the wire harness that connects to the little control panel there, and we'll disconnect that wire harness. Unplug the connector to the controls, and we'll set that escutcheon aside. Now with the escutcheon out of the way, we're next going to remove 3 Phillips screws that secure that housing. And we'll just tilt that assembly forward enough that we can disconnect the wire harness on the left-hand side. It has a locking tab on that, so depress the tab, pull the harness away. We also have a water line that comes down through an opening in that housing, so we'll need to pull that up and out of the opening. That will allow us to pull the whole assembly out of the refrigerator, and we can set it on a suitable work surface where we can replace the part. Now that we have the assembly on a suitable work surface, we're just going to lay that face down. And the water actuator is held in place with 2 little pivot pins with a couple of retaining straps held in place by 2 screws. There's also a leaf spring there that will engage that tab on the end of it to hold it in the open position. So we'll need to release that spring tension. You need to do that with your finger, or if you need your needle nose pliers to pull it out of there. Just release the tension on it. Next we're going to remove those 2 screws and the metal retaining strap. Now we can lift that water actuator up out of the opening. Just hold that spring in place. We can discard the old part. Now if that spring pops out of position while you're disassembling that, the other end of it slides into a little slot in underneath the 2 switches. So if it does fall out, just line it up, push it back into that little opening, and you'll be ready to reinstall the new water actuator. So take that, locate the 2 pivot pins, set them into the 2 slotted openings, and we're going to replace the retaining strap. Just hold that retaining strap square while you're tightening the screw to make sure it stays nice and straight. And we'll replace the one on the outside edge. And again, rotate that around and make sure that it stays straight while you tighten the screw. Now we're going to push that spring around and underneath the lever on that water actuator and make sure that it pops it back into the open position. Now before we reinstall this assembly in the refrigerator, we are going to need to remove this circuit board so that we can gain access to this opening that the water line fits into. So we'll take those 6 screws out, remove the protective shield, and tilt the circuit board down, and that will give us access to line up our water tube, because it needs to fit to the bottom of this spout and bottom out there. So with a small number 1 Phillips screwdriver, we'll remove the 3 screws across the top first, remove the protective shield, then we'll remove the 3 screws across the bottom. We'll next want to take those screws and the protective shield and put them with the refrigerator, because we will reinstall that board and shield after the whole assembly is mounted into the refrigerator, so we'll need them handy. Now, with all the screws removed, you can just tilt out on the top of that board and lift it up and away from the terminals on the light bulb, and then you can just let that rotate down. And again, that will allow us to gain access through the front to insert that water line into the opening. Now, when we reinstall the dispenser housing, we need to put that water line down through this hole so that it's flush with the bottom of it. Now, to do that, we'll remove that small circuit board, tilt it forward. We'll take the whole assembly. First of all, push the ice door in, depress it a bit first until we can put the whole assembly into place. And then we'll put the 3 mounting screws back in to hold it there. Now that we have the assembly secure in the opening, we can tilt that board back down and out of the way. And then with a pair of needle nose pliers, we're going to gently grasp that water line and guide it into that spout. And we'll just check and make sure that we have it fully inserted. It's flush with the bottom. Now, before we attach the screws, we're going to reconnect that wire harness on the left side and make sure that the locking tab engages. And then we'll lift that board up so that it clears the terminals for the light bulb, and then rotate it into position, make sure it sits flush in the holder. And then we'll replace the 3 screws across the bottom first. These are rather small screws, so take caution that we don't strip the heads of them, and use the right size screwdriver. Now we can take the plastic moisture shield, put that in position, and then we'll install these screws across the top. Now, with all of the screws replaced, we're now ready to put the cover back in position. So we'll take the escutcheon, locate the wire harness, and it has a little locating tab on one side that faces the front of the escutcheon. So just rotate it into position, make sure the pins line up properly, push it firmly into place, rotate the escutcheon up, and then we'll engage there's a hook on each side that catch on that housing, and 3 across the top. Make sure that those fit into position. And then push straight down on it till they engage. And then we'll replace the 3 screws across the bottom. Put the drip tray back into position. Tuck the right hand side in first, and then press it firmly in until it's flush across the front. We'll check the action of both the water and ice dispensers. Make sure that the ice dispenser door closes properly and that the water actuator engages the switch. We're ready to reconnect the power, and our repair is complete. I told you it was an easy job. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your repair.